Something doesn't taste right about this coffee. Great. All right. So, chapter 21 here. Sounds pretty good. A new heaven and a new earth. I've barely even seen the earth, the old earth. Doesn't matter, he's got a new one coming here. And the old heaven, like space, hard to imagine this. Okay, let's start with the notes. Or should I? Let's start with verse 4. I love verse 4. 21:4. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. Can you imagine that? No more dying. Shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain. The former things are passed away. Amazing. Isn't that the most wonderful thing? You know, a lot of atheists will come at you and they'll say, heaven just sounds boring to me. You know, I just don't get it. I mean, wouldn't you get bored? That's what they think, that if you didn't have any more pain or sorrow, that you'd just get bored with life and you'd want to die anyway. Well, I don't see how you attribute satisfaction to the suffering you deal with now. You know, God's going to make it pleasant for you to exist in heaven, and you won't have to worry about dying like how you do now. You know, I go to work every day and I feel like somebody's going to shoot me. I don't have to worry about that anymore, you know? Like, how do you plan anything out, or I just don't get it. I don't see how they find satisfaction in their existence that has an ultimate end where they just don't exist, you know? Did you ever exist to begin with? If you acknowledge no existence, or nobody created you, I'm just nothing. And I'll return to the nothingness from whence I proceeded. That seems kind of sad. Like, why do you proceed to begin with? Because I like AC/DC music, so therefore I can move forward. Duh. I guess. I don't know. I don't know, bro. But I know I proceeded from some goo 10 million years ago. Well, anyway, this is what is written, so shall it be. God is going to make this so. So I don't think those atheists are going to make it to enjoy this. They're not going to get to enjoy this. But I will, thank God. Because I don't have much satisfaction in this life right now. A lot of Christians tell me I'm supposed to be so satisfied and so rich, and you know, all this prosperity gospel nonsense, and I don't really agree with them. You know, they tell me that, but I don't really get it, you know? I don't get them. I had a black lady yesterday. It's pretty funny. You can tell we're like opposites on well, maybe we're the same person. I don't know. She comes in and she reminds me of a lady years and years ago that hated me at Walmart. Like asked me, "Why are you here? You don't seem like you enjoy your job, you know." And I responded to her. I was like, "Well, you know what? You're being pretty nasty to me. How am I supposed to enjoy my job if you're being completely nasty to me?" And then she stopped yelling at me then, but so this lady kind of reminded me of her. She came in, she's like, ugh, you know. I greeted her, good morning, and she came up with this loaf of bread that I had never seen before, and she's like, "How much is it?" And I said, "I have no idea. I've never seen that before. Let me check the price." Boop, boop. And it was only $1.50. And I was like, wow, that's a pretty good price for that bread, considering the eggs are up to $9 now. I think the regular loaf of bread is like $4. And she said to me, "Okay, I'll be getting that." I said, "I would too. That's a pretty good price for that." And then she went back and got a can of beans or peas with no salt. I don't like those no salt products. I think you need the salt in there. But anyway, she got her can of peas, and then she saw I was reading the Bible, and then she could talk to me. Then she started talking to me. She was like, "So what church do you go to?" And I said, "I don't really go to church. I have a home church Bible study sometimes, you know." And she said to me, "Yeah, I don't go to church either. People at church are weird." Have a good day. Bye-bye. So, because people at church will say that to you, that you're supposed to enjoy this life and you're supposed to be thriving in this life. This life. And I don't think so necessarily. I think this life is kind of a struggle a lot of times because I don't really fit in anywhere, you know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's my problem. If I would fit into the church curriculum, then I would succeed in life. However, I do not. Therefore, I am exiled to the outer realms. But one day, verse 4, there's going to be no more of that crying or suffering. It's going to make sense. There's not going to be, it's going to be a very different church system, I think, with God. Thank God. Anyway, I just thought that lady was funny. I don't go to church either. I'd rather read the Bible at home. Those church people are weird. Strange. Something like that, she said. Yeah. All right, let's start looking at these notes. I'll stop talking, sorry. The first note is on verse 2. "And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband." Okay, here's the note. There are two Jerusalems in the scriptures. See note on Psalm 48:2, and both are called the holy city, Revelation 11:2. But this Jerusalem is not strictly Jewish. Wow. Galatians 4:26, 3:27 through 29. Like the earthly political Jerusalem, see note on Ezekiel 48:35, the new Jerusalem is the Lamb's wife. Ephesians 5:23 through 32. Not the fathers. Hosea 2:14 through 23. Okay. So there you have it. So, the Gentiles have got a way in anyway, huh? Chris will remind me of that sometimes, that Jewish people have been very racist to him, you know? They've said to him, well, you're a Gentile, so you don't matter. Good day. Well, according to this, All right, 21:6. And he said unto me, it is done. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give unto him that is athirst of the fountain of the water of life freely. Here's the note. There are two endings to the book of Revelation. For a similar thing, see note on Romans 15:27. The first is here in verses 6 through 8. The second is in 22:13 through 21. Okay, let's read 6 through 8. Okay, we read 6, 7. And the abominable, and murderers, and whoremongers, and sorcerers, and idolaters, and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. So he's saying this is the first ending. To go here, right? Yeah, there it is. Already, but he's supposed to be working in you, and that's what we should be striving for, is overcoming our different shortcomings. Like I was joking, come and has overcome. Do I accept that or not? So he says, he that overcometh. But then if you're one of these, anyway, it's not so much, shouldn't be afraid of losing your salvation if you're dealing with something, but it should give you pause. And if you had a lifestyle where you lived in those ways, do you think you'd be worthy of heaven? Do you think you'd get in there? Although all men, saved and unsaved, are liars, in well, nature has been cut loose from the part that can't. Yeah, that's kind of what I was implying a little bit, but he's laying into it here. A liar. He is a Christian that lies. That's funny. Or bad, I don't know. Do you understand what he's saying? I guess I do. Because you say that like, yes, I have overcome my sin, and I never have impure thoughts whatsoever at work. At no time or point in existence, in the domain of existence and time and matter, do I ever have an inappropriate thought about a female at any time whatsoever. That's what it sounds like. That sounds like I'm lying, right? Because your spirit is born again in him, but then your flesh is still tied to the sin of this world, and your flesh is what Satan can get at and manipulate. But the more that you recognize how powerless you are, and it's like the more you struggle, the more difficult it is. But if you let go and let Jesus Christ take control, the less likely you're going to give in to that fleshly nature. So there's a conflict. He's acknowledging that conflict between your flesh and your spirit. So it's very good that you should acknowledge. Now, verse 8 could be taken out of context, right? Or, yeah, verse 8, to make a born-again Christian think that they'll be thrown into hell for having an inappropriate thought or something, you know. So you have to think about it dispensationally and realize this is the end of time, and you're in a different time period where faith plus works, or and you also have to acknowledge the flesh and the spirit and recognize and be honest, like he's being honest in this comment, you know. I mean, how many people do you recognize how hypocritical Christians can be sometimes, you know? So a Christian liar. So I recognize what he's saying. Or are you self-righteous about it and say that you've attained perfection already, you know? So let's take a break. We're on the next page here, and let's keep going. We got quite a bit here more. As far as the notes, I don't have much more to say myself, but he's got a whole gigantic paragraph. So let's take a break. We'll be back in a moment to conclude chapter 21.